ago. I mean, it was a GAO study about the programs for employers, not employees. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like 80% of the business is by big companies, not little companies. Yeah.
Right.
So, well, let's start that. So, if I had a small business, what kind of help might there be for, as an employer to actually come to a one-stop?
Actually, lots. First of all, if you come to a one-stop through their business services folks, if you needed assistance with recruitment, you need to hire. Even if you're a small business, okay,
Right.
you need to hire 2 people, say. And this actually happened. A friend of mine owns an insurance company and had asked me about, kind of knew what I did, didn't
Right.
what I did, and then asked me. He said, "Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Because I can decrease the time that it's going to take you to find somebody, and I can probably reduce your costs too." And he's like, "Well, how can you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, simple." I said, "What do you do when you go to recruit and hire somebody?" He said, "Well, I put an ad in the paper." Okay. Well, Maryland has a statewide job search website called Maryland Workforce Exchange. Okay, and employers also go on Maryland Workforce Exchange.
Right.
Individual job seekers go on, and within that with that website and that database, the job seekers, there's a resume in there. There's education requirements in there, so they can go on and they can search online, like America's Job Bank, if you're familiar with that, and there's a whole host of other ones too. So job seekers go in and put their information in. Employers come to that site and actually look for people and screen for people. All right. So if you have a job posting, I can post your job in that, and then job seekers can see that posting, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Exactly. Right.
So you can post the job, and we can also sort and do matches based upon that.
Oh, I see. So when you post a job and people are applying for that, or you have other resumes in the database, you could search through that data
to see what matches.
For the employer and
see what matches.
And do that kind of analysis.
And the job seeker can actually respond to the, it depends on what the employer wants, but the job seeker can actually respond to the employer's job announcement or job posting.
I see. I mean directly.
Directly.
Right.
If that's what they want,
Right.
or if they can come through us.
Right.
If they come through us, then, we screen we do elementary screening.
Right.
Just the same. It would save you the first step if you put it in the paper.
Yeah.
Because every time you put a job ad in the paper, you probably get it's probably like a third, and a third. So you probably have about a third of the people that you get are just underqualified. A third are overqualified, and it's that center third that you probably really want to look at. Yeah. And that's what that's what Workforce Development Services can help you obtain.
So you get us down to the third.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what else for the employer?
There's also outplacement assistance. If an employer is say you've been in an area and for whatever reason, for economic reasons, or because you found a place that's better suited to your business and you need to move. Most areas hope that you don't do that, but if you do, as opposed to just laying off everybody and having them fend for themselves, we go in and work with the employers, if the employers will let us, and help provide them with outplacement assistance. Wow. Now, outplacement assistance is really kind of a, if you go with a lot of employers will contract out with different firms. That outplacement assistance can cost an employer anywhere between $90,000 and several $100,000, depending on the size of the company.
Wow.
We had done one with a local, actually not local, with a national grocery chain here a few years ago, who basically had laid off about 400 people and moved.
Wow.
Okay, and they were paying a, quote unquote, a professional consultant to do that, and it was costing them about $180,000 to do that. Until they found out that the consultant had to come to us anyway because we have access to the unemployment data. We have access to resources that they don't because they're not a government entity.
Exactly.
And they don't have that connectivity. So, so basically what they did is they ended up dumping the outplacement service, and they actually just went with us.
That's terrific. How about if you're a small employer, the training money that's available for in-house employees?
Okay.
Is that from you guys through One Stops, or where is that
Yes,
from?
I mean, Maryland has a specific program called the Maryland Business Works. And the way it works, it's a 50% reimbursement program. It's really designed for smaller employers, because you were mentioning them a while ago.
Right.
But if the employer is in an area where they're kind of like the part of the big game in town, if you're in an area where that industry is dependent upon that employer, then the area itself can decide that, yeah, it's an in-demand industry in my area, and I'd like to have these funds go, and they ask the state if we can do that, and most times they say yes. So what that will do is that will reimburse, in Maryland, the employer for 50% of the employee's training cost, usually up to about $5,000 per employee.
Yeah. So what would be a small business? I mean, is there an example you could think of, half a dozen that would call? I mean, would like to go to a Microsoft computer course or something that costs...
Oh, the training program?
Yeah, the training money.
The training money can go to, it could go for a, it has to be a transferable skill, so anything like a Microsoft training program.
Right.
It could be if it's paired with something else, it could be English as a second language.
I see,
It could be a variety of different types of
customer service.
Customer service training.
Really? Wow.
Upgrade skills training. The key thing is the training should be transferable so that it promotes the individual, or it helps to walk up the
So in other words, if I was an employer, a small business, like, wow, God, I'd love to get this customer service people, trained, and there was a course for $1,000 or something like that. That, in other words, the state could kick in $500 for them to go to.
Half of it.
Yeah.
The employer selects the training. They select the individuals.
Wow.
And all they really have to
do is write the check.
all they got to do is it is reimbursement, so the employer has to pay for it up front, and then when they're done with it, they would send the invoice back to the local area, and they would cut them a check for $500. As easy as that.
So it's not a stack of forms like this.
No, it's actually, this is really easy.
Right.
There are some that are like that, but Maryland Business Works is definitely the easiest income worker training program.
What else? I mean, in some of these centers around, I've seen like helping employees with employers with daycare centers and other kinds of things that may help a business. You know what I mean? Or is that rare?
That's kind of the daycare piece of it's kind of rare because of the licensing required with holding children. Some centers have child care facilities like your gym would, so that you can leave your children there as long as they're there.
Right.
But you can't leave them there and
No,
then...
I don't mean that. I mean like helping businesses who want to start a daycare center in their business. Right.
I mean, they will... A lot of workforce centers are partnered with their economic development offices, so that becomes basically small business entrepreneurial types of activities, and the two can combine their energies and efforts to help an employer do something like that.
I see.
Because it comes back to training, it comes back to access to capital and things like that, and to funds. So, they could do that.
Yeah. So on the employer side, it's really hiring people, firing people, and training people.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you're about. So if I'm looking for a job side, first of all, when it comes to my mind, do I have to be out of a job to come to you?
No.
Okay.
If you're, you can come to any one stop anywhere in the U.S. to look for a better job or to look for any job. Where it comes to where the eligibility comes in, it's for training dollars.
I see. Okay.
For training dollars and for what the feds call intensive services. So if there's any type, basically if there's an intensive service like a training type of activity, you'd send somebody to community college or to a college to get trained. Then you'd have to be eligible, and more than likely you'd have to be unemployed.
Right. So if you're out of a job, if you're not on a job yet, it'd be wise to come and start learning the system. So then if you're out, then you don't have to pay. How many people spend 6 months and then they're against the wall now?
They have to get a job.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But also for the training. So, I mean, if you're looking for, like, starting a business, I mean, does Maryland have many centers where it help you start a business?
The business entrepreneurial training programs and a lot of areas, a lot of counties in the state have what they call small business resource centers. The county we're in right now, Anne Arundel County in Maryland, the local economic development office and the local workforce office, since I used to be the director.
Right, I see.
County, we partnered together and created a small business resource center. And the idea is we brought exactly what we were talking about a few minutes ago, is we tried to bring as many services and resources together for small businesses and for businesses in general. So you had the workforce programs. You had the small business loan programs and so forth that were all there. You had other types of programs too that were associated with ways to. There's a group here called SCORE, and what they do is it's retired executives, and they actually come in and. If you want to start your own business, they actually give you advice on how to start your business, capital, raising capital.
But your training money, can that be used for entrepreneurial training?
The training money could be used for that, but the person has to meet the eligibility requirements.
Which would be, why would
if
that
they're
be
unemployed.
Different? Okay, right. Okay. That's what I mean. So most of the training money is unemployed. Actually, I was in one of your centers, and it was a couple of years ago, and where do you live, Mike? You live in Columbia, Maryland, the one there.
Okay.
And they were saying, like doctors coming in. And, and getting, because they're out of a job now as a doctor.
Right.
and they need to upgrade their skills, and they go back and take some course to do something so they could get another job.
Well, and that that brings up a good point too, because a lot of people, the connotation that it's the unemployment office.
Right.
Okay. We have everyone, every economic level that you could possibly imagine go into one stop. Use one stops to find jobs, to find a better job. To find training activities, or to do things like, find a summer job for their kids.
So theoretically, as long as you're out of work, this training money is available. Yeah, and then you have to qualify in other ways. And my understanding, most of it is that there has to be, they don't want you to get trained to be a buggy whip manufacturer.
if you're using, they want you to be trained in a demand industry.
Right.
Something that, for a good example would be is that no one's going to approve training for a photo lab technician anymore.
I see. Oh, I see. Right.
Because there's no more photo labs.
Right. How about massage therapy or something like that?
I mean, every state has, as part of Workforce Development Services, they have what's known as the Labor Market Information Group, and they actually do research and gather statistics on what are the growing industries and what are the demand industries based upon the number of people that are in those industries, based upon unemployment taxes paid.
Right.
Any of those.
So that data comes from unemployment taxes paid?
Yeah. Wage records.
I see. That's where the wage records are. Yeah. So if I'm looking for a job, then I can come to One Stop and help me find a job, right?
And in some cases, you don't have to come to a One Stop.
Oh, really? Just all online?
In Maryland, we have Maryland Workforce Exchange is www.mwejobs.com. And you can go online and search for the jobs that are there. You can search in some cases specifically for a we recently in the past year or so had started to concentrate areas of large concentrations of employers, like BWI Airport, for example, here. BWI Airport, there's about 250 separate employers in that airport. The problem with it is none of them is going to spend the money to start a website so they all can post their jobs.
Right.
So the state, at the request of the Animal Workforce Director, which was me at the time, created a special button on that website to consolidate all those jobs.
Oh, wonderful! Oh, that's
so that is so that enabled that people, if they wanted to go and get a job at the airport, to do that. Because it was something they couldn't do before because of the security, because you can't get back to the employers because you have to have an airline ticket.
Right, exactly.
So unless you want to search for a job when you're en route to a flight.
So back at if I'm an employee, or out of work, or going to soon be out of work, or thinking about a better job, what you guys offer is you help me do resumes, right?
Yes.
Okay. And my understanding too is that you will photocopy my resumes if I need 100 or something like that.
If you need to copy your resumes and send them out, you can copy your resumes and send them out.
Online services. Do you have online help available that I could use a computer there or not?
Yes, there's in every One Stop there's at least one computer. There's at least one bank of computers, and some One Stops there's several banks.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
So I mean, it's like a headhunting, but it's free, right?
Right.
And then plus the magic is that if I need to be trained for a job that's in demand, that's training money. And
correct.
My understanding that training money, I mean, that's you're not going to get a PhD, out of
Correct.
this.
It's designed for short-term type
Right,
of training.
Right. So a couple months, up to a year. Is there a rule?
There's it's generally speaking, the rule is about 6 months to a year max. Some areas will exceed that, but not. But in some cases, but not too often. In some cases, you'll have someone come in and needs 2 classes to finish a baccalaureate degree.
Oh, I see. Huh.
So, that would be something that I would have definitely funded.
Wow, see, that's a real new one.
So,
I never even thought of it that way.
Because you figure, you're either in the process of going to school. You may lose your job along the way, so now you don't have tuition assistance anymore. But you still have 2 classes left to take. Maybe you ran out of financial aid, so you're trying to find ways.
So would that be possible even if you're employed to get that?
The incumbent worker training programs are usually based upon working with the employer,
I see.
and they're usually on a 50% reimbursement basis because you are employed.
Ooh, that's interesting.
With the employer.
So I could go to my employer and get them to contact you to get half that tuition paid.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Who would have known that?
And that's kind of the marketing strategy that we've done too.
Exactly. Now I'm one of the. There's one of these things. All the So I see WI Adult. Now that's what we were talking about. Most of those programs.
That was one of them. There's actually the 2 that deal with the average person that walks in. Are the adults basically are pretty much anybody. Some areas have income restrictions on it because there's income restrictions on the performance levels of this. So, and it varies from area to area. But then you have dislocated workers, and dislocated workers is basically someone who was working someplace and through no fault of their own was laid off because of a company downsizing.
Does the company have to apply for that?
No. Okay.
So I could come if I was fired because I shrank a little bit and laid some people off. Okay. So could those people be a dislocated worker?
Yes, they are.
They are.
Fired, no. Laid off, yes.
Yes, right.
Okay, so if you're laid off,
yes.
Okay, all you have to do is you would bring in either. Usually, the employer's going to give you a letter saying we're laying you off effective this date. So you keep a copy of that letter, and you take that into your one-stop with you, and that's your ticket for eligibility for training dollars.
Wow, gee, that's amazing. Huh? And that's well. Then how about the other one that interests me too is the Trade Adjustment Assistant one. Trade
Adjustment Assistant Act is very similar to the dislocated worker piece. Trade adjustment is really interesting because what it can do, it kind of is partnered with unemployment insurance, and it can actually extend your unemployment benefits while you go to training.
I see. So, if my little company that I laid somebody off with, if we have to prove that I laid it off because of imports or something like that?
Right, foreign competition.
Foreign competition. So if somehow foreign competition, I got to convince the board or somebody else.
What happens with the Trade Adjustment Act is that the employer has to file a petition with the U.S. Department of Labor. And if the petition is approved, then it means that all the individuals laid off as a result of that are eligible for trade adjustment.
So if a company is shrinking, it behoove one of those employees to get the boss to do that.
Correct.
Right. Because then they extend their unemployment compensation.
Correct.
And number 2, then they're eligible for training money. They may be eligible for training money anyway, right?
They would be eligible for training money anyway. This would help. This would cover their. This would cover their unemployment. The time it would extend their unemployment from 1 year to up to 2 years.
Wow, another year of unemployment to get out of it. Wow.
Right.
That's terrific. Who would have known? Now, unemployment. Now, I've read somewhere recently that less people are eligible for unemployment. Why is that? In our economy, just the kind of economy we have because people are just flitting around too much, and so they're not officially fired, or
they don't,
or officially laid off.
You have to obviously you have to pay in. It's an insurance. It's an insurance policy basically. So with unemployment, the person has to basically make enough payments to pay into the system to go get pay out.
We don't have as many.
So if you've got someone who has who's worked for a significant period of time, then they have contributed into the system and should be able to draw it back out. out again.
So that's the issue, is
Yeah.
that a lot of people maybe have funny jobs where they're not putting into the system and they're paying taxes but not to the unemployment.
Exactly.
Right. I see. And adults, seniors, I mean, all these programs. So, I mean, what you're telling me, I mean, and what I would tell everybody, you don't even know what's there. I mean, every place is going to be different. Mainly, these programs are set up to help people when they have trouble getting work.
Right.
Yeah. Most of them are not income requirement, right?
Not very many anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
the adult funding stream, like I said, areas do have income restrictions, and some of them are pretty low, which makes it difficult.
Yeah.
The one that we didn't talk about was youth.
Oh,
and youth, there is a.
What is youth? What age?
It's basically designed to help youth who have basically dropped out of high school re-engage the workforce.
But how old?
How old?
Yeah, how old?
You got to be 16 to drop out of high school, so it would be 16 to 21.
Okay, 16 to 21. Yeah. And so that youth is only for high school dropouts?
It is for, you have to be economically disadvantaged, and you have to have barriers to employment.
Right.
And one of them would be if you have a handicap or disability. So if you were a kid and you were in school and you had an IEP, that would also
What's an IEP?
Individual education plan.
I don't even know what that is. You've already explained it. But if so, is it fair to say that if you're 16 to 21 and you have trouble getting a job, you should check it out anyway?
You should check it out anyway. There's probably going to be services in there for you anyway.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a job and you don't know where to start, it's a good place to start.
But even training money, I mean, a lot of it sounds, it's complicated or so much is based on individual, even though, I mean, talking to you, I mean, a lot of us think that, well, because there's this big rule in the law, but the rule in the law is a little wavy based on the individual circumstances many times.
Correct.
So that it's hard to say definitely you're eligible, you're not, and all this kind of stuff because the individual circumstance could change that whole thing.
Correct.
Because there's so many ifs, ands, or buts in the law, even though there's an income requirement that says X dollars, then we have the if, ands, or buts in paragraph C.
Right, and that's what the one-stop staff are supposed to do. They're supposed to navigate you through that and be able to determine your eligibility for that, and also connect you with partner program services that they may not be administering, but they may have someone there that can. We talked about entrepreneurial training programs.
Right.
The economic development offices, if they're connected to the workforce, to the WIBs in that area, their programs they offer free in many cases entrepreneurial training programs. How to write a business plan.
Right.
Those
Exactly.
sort of
Right. Why hire an accountant thousands of dollars from not doing? For free. No, I believe. Well, this is wonderful. Do you have anything you want to say you think we didn't cover that you want to get out?
The only thing is that, the services that are there, take advantage of them. If you can get access to a computer and Google Workforce Investment Act and Google Workforce Investment Boards, you'll come up with something that's in your area for sure.
And the money, a lot of people, now we're going to talk about budget cuts. I mean, because there's budget cuts in the paper, that means all your training money goes away?
When you see federal cuts in the paper, that's a danger. That is a danger to training funds. As a matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned that the omnibus bill that was just passed actually included a $250 million national rescission for workforce programs.
A national rescission means they're taking it away?
Right, they're taking back money basically they already gave you.
Yeah.
So they gave you money, and then now that they need it, they're kind of like Indian givers. They're taking it back. The bad part about it, you may have already spent it.
I see.
Because it's not on new money, it's on past money. So we're just trying to figure out what the impact of that is going to be on
That's
us as a
interesting.
state. So.
But what I sort of see is that when budget cuts like that, it's usually a fraction of a percent if it really happens. Versus it's usually the talk. That everybody hears and reads about versus the reality, that happens 6 months later.
Right.
And everybody politically gets it, And people have a perception. So I wonder if your calls go down when that happens because they think, oh, you've gone away. I read about budget cuts.
Well,
that office isn't there anymore.
Well, like I said, when we started, workforce programs have been around since the 1930s.
You haven't gone away.
and they haven't gone away yet.
And probably incrementally grown every year.
Pretty much, or have expanded in different directions anyway. I think workforce programs are going to be around for a while.
Probably more needed now than ever before.
Exactly, because at the present time, with the retirement of the baby boomers of that generation, and with the that creates a lot of opportunities for folks.
Also, nobody's staying in jobs long, so everybody's going like this and that.
Everybody jumps. This generation jumps. My generation jumps.
But it's not us that wanting to do it. I think it's reality.
Right.
That's mega. I mean, the business is gone. No business is going to go like this, like IBM in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Right.
That businesses are growing, shrinking, blah, 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 that, and so everybody's much more flexible. And actually, I don't know if you heard yesterday, they're talking about what new money programs for workers if a recession's coming, and they're even talking about. I mean, it's a Reuben and a bunch of smart guys, I guess got in a room to see what they could offer,
Well, the funny part about it is, if you look at the history of workforce programs, is that when the economy takes a turn for the worst, usually funding for workforce programs increases.
Right. Exactly. That's what they're talking about. All the programs, instead of giving a tax break, let's get the money they need a job,
right.
Things like that, and that will finance the economy and boom it too.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's what I was saying. That's what they're talking about. So you may be in for a raise.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks.